Chancellor Marisol stood before the towering crystal pulpit in the grand hall of Elantris Prime. Sunlight struck the gilded walls, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the polished marble floor. The hall was full of nobles, ambassadors, and priests, all dressed in shimmering robes of silver and blue. At the very center of the room, Princess Leora sat on her velvet throne, her face calm but her green eyes sharp with curiosity. Marisol cleared her throat. She held the royal scroll in one hand and tapped it lightly with a slender gold rod. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the gentle hum of the palace's energy crystals seemed to quiet. By the will of Emperor Thalos, Marisol began, her voice steady and clear, and in the name of the High Council of Elantris, it is declared that Princess Leora of House Celestine is to be joined in marriage to the human envoy, Miles Harper of Earth. A soft gasp rippled through the audience. Some guests exchanged worried glances. Others looked at Miles, who stood nearby in his simple dark suit, silver badge gleaming on his chest. He bowed respectfully toward the princess. Miles felt many eyes on him, some curious, some fearful, and some openly angry. Princess Leora leaned forward. Her long silver hair fell across her shoulders like a waterfall of light. She wore a gown of pale green silk, embroidered with patterns that matched the living vines creeping up the marble columns. Her lips pressed together in a straight line as she watched Marisol continue. "The Nexus Accord," Marisol said, "was forged last cycle to unite our worlds in peace and cooperation. This marriage will bind our peoples forever, strengthening trade, science, and culture. The princess's voice may speak her mind, but the decree stands firm." At those words, Leora's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened around the arms of her throne. She felt a cold knot in her stomach. All her life, traditions had guided her steps. Now she faced a promise she had not asked for, a promise that would tie her to a man she barely knew, one from a world she had only seen in holograms. Marisol rolled up the scroll and held it against her chest. "Let this union be a sign of hope, of new beginnings. Let it shine like these crystals, bringing light to both Earth and Elantris Prime." She stepped back, and the palace trumpets sounded. Bright notes echoed off the walls. Some nobles applauded politely, but others stayed silent. Miles straightened and offered Leora a gentle bow. She stood as well, her posture perfect. For a single heartbeat, their eyes met. In that moment, the entire court seemed to hold its breath. Leora's gaze did not soften. She surveyed Miles with a mixture of defiance and wonder. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away down the long corridor. The echo of her footsteps was the only sound. Behind her, the court whispered and shifted. The promise of peace had been made, but the princess's heart was still her own. And as the golden doors closed behind her, everyone in the hall understood that this was only the beginning of a story none of them could yet predict. Miles Harper stepped from the airlock of the Celestine, the royal transport vessel, and onto the gleaming landing platform of Elantris Prime. The sky above was a pale lavender, streaked with light from the planet's 3 suns. He tightened his jacket around him, feeling the cool breeze that carried the scent of alien flowers and ozone. Rows of palace guards stood at attention, their armor polished to a mirror shine. Behind them, tall crystalline towers reached toward the sky, each facet glowing softly with stored energy. Miles swallowed hard. He had read every briefing, studied every map and holoportrait of the palace, but nothing prepared him for standing here in person, weighed by the hopes and fears of 2 worlds. An aide approached him, bowing deeply. "Envoy Harper," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "follow me to the court of welcome." She turned, and Miles followed across the platform. His polished shoes tapped a steady rhythm on the smooth surface. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside the court, hundreds of onlookers had gathered. Noble families in flowing robes of gold and violet whispered behind fans and crystal goblets. Priests held ceremonial staffs topped with softly glowing orbs. At the far end, on a raised dais covered in ivory carpeting, sat Princess Leora's empty throne. Ornate tapestries of past rulers hung on the walls, but all eyes were on the visitor from Earth. Miles paused at the base of the dais. He cleared his throat and bowed deeply, more out of habit than confidence. He felt the weight of 1,000 judgments. Is he worthy? Will he bring ruin or glory? The thought tightened his chest. A deep voice broke the silence. "Envoy Harper," said Chancellor Marisol from the side of the dais. She wore robes that matched the sapphire glow of the palace crystals. "You have come far to stand before our princess. Speak your purpose." Miles lifted his head. He looked across the court, meeting a few curious stares and several cold ones. He spoke clearly, choosing simple words. "I come in peace," he said. "I bring goodwill and friendship from Earth. I wish to learn your culture and share what we know. I hope our peoples can work together for a better future." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some whispered approval, but many faces remained stern. Miles swallowed. He knew his words were expected, but he hoped they were true enough to bridge the gap between worlds. Chancellor Marisol nodded slowly. "Your words are courteous, envoy. You will be our guest for one cycle. During that time, you will study our customs, our history, and our laws. You may ask questions, provided they show respect." Miles inclined his head. "Thank you, Chancellor. I will do my best." As he rose, a group of nobles in violet robes stepped forward. The head noble, Lady Verena, spoke with a soft, icy voice. "We must protect Princess Leora from undue influence. We trust you understand the importance of our traditions." She glanced at Miles as though testing his spirit. Miles nodded again. "I understand. I know Earth's customs differ. I will follow your guidance willingly." Lady Verena's eyes narrowed for a moment. Then she stepped back. The court shifted, and Chancellor Marisol gestured toward a side corridor. "Envoy Harper, your quarters await you. Rest now. Tomorrow, your lessons begin." Miles turned and walked away, his heart pounding. He passed guards whose expressions ranged from polite interest to outright suspicion. Every corridor felt endless, every door heavy with expectation. He thought of Earth, of bustling cities and crowded streets, of his family waiting for his reports, and wondered if he could live up to the dream of unity he carried in his heart. At last, he reached a small sitting room overlooking the palace gardens. A single window framed the image of silver vines and soft pink blossoms. Miles closed the door behind him. He leaned against it, closed his eyes, and let out a long breath. He was on an alien world, far from home. The challenge ahead was daunting, but despite his nerves, a spark of hope kindled in his chest. Tomorrow, he would begin the journey, one step closer to earning trust, one word closer to friendship, and one moment closer to a bond that could change both their worlds forever. The Hall of Luminous Vines was quiet as dawn light filtered through its vaulted ceilings. Thin, glowing tendrils of bioluminescent vines crept along stone arches, casting gentle green shadows. At the center of the hall stood a circular dais of polished obsidian. Today, it would host the first formal meeting between Princess Leora and the human envoy, Miles Harper. Miles stepped onto the dais, feeling the vine-patterned floor cool beneath his shoes. He bowed deeply, head lowered, and glanced up at the dozen nobles seated in a half-circle. All eyes were on him. He straightened and cleared his throat, ready to speak polite greetings he had practiced so many times. The grand doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Princess Leora entered. She walked with calm grace, every step measured. Her silver hair was braided and wound around a delicate crown of moonstone. She wore a simple gown of pale emerald that matched the living vines above. As she reached the dais, she paused, beginning to speak, but then froze, her gaze falling on Miles. Miles felt time slow. Across the small space between them, Leora's green eyes held a mixture of surprise, suspicion, and something he could not name. He met her stare, his heart pounding. He wanted to speak, to break the silence, but found only his own breath echoing in his ears. Chancellor Marisol stepped forward, her voice smooth and gentle. "Princess Leora, Envoy Harper greets you in peace and friendship." She bowed to both of them, then retreated to her place. Leora blinked once, then let her arms fall to her sides, but her body remained tense. Miles took a cautious step forward. He offered a small, respectful bow to Leora. "Your Highness," he said, using the words he hoped would show his respect. "It is an honor to meet you in person. I look forward to learning from you and of your world." He lifted his head, searching her expression for any sign of kindness. Leora's lips pressed together. She inclined her head slightly, barely more than a nod. She spoke in a soft, clear voice. "Envoy Harper, I have seen your face in holograms, but your voice is new to me." She paused, as if weighing each word. "I will not promise friendship yet, but I will listen." A ripple of relief passed through Miles. He straightened fully. "Thank you, Princess. I appreciate your honesty." He forced a gentle smile, hoping warmth would reach her. Around them, the nobles murmured, intrigued by this rare moment of equality between the two worlds. For one breathless moment, they simply stood together on the dais, human and Elantrian, so different and yet so alike. Then Leora stepped back, signaling the end of the ceremony. Miles turned with her, following her down the hall as the doors closed behind them. Though their first words were cautious, a quiet spark had been lit. Each carried new thoughts. He, of hope. She, of questions yet to be answered. And in that unspoken moment, both knew their journey had truly begun. Early morning light filtered through the glass dome of the palace gardens, painting the air in soft gold. Princess Leora stood by a marble fountain, its water spiraling like liquid crystal. Miles Harper approached, carrying a slender holo-projector. He offered it with a polite bow. "Your Highness," he said, "I'd like to show you something from Earth." Leora's green eyes followed the device. She sensed its glow even before he activated it. She nodded, curiosity softening her usual reserve. Miles tapped the side of the projector. In midair, a small blue planet appeared, slowly spinning. It was Earth. The princess leaned forward, surprise flickering across her features. "I thought Earth was too far," she whispered. Miles smiled. "We can bring parts of it here." He touched the globe, and the image zoomed in on a cityscape of tall towers and bright lights. Leora watched the city bustle with tiny holographic people. They moved in perfect order. Trains glided on tracks, cars wove between buildings, and pedestrians hurried along sidewalks. "It looks busy," she said. "Very busy," Miles agreed. "But we also have art, music, and dance to calm our minds." He changed the display. A human ballet unfolded in light mist. Dancers in white tutus leaped and twirled on a stage. Leora blinked. She had never seen figures move so softly and yet so powerfully. She took a step closer. Her silver hair caught the light. She watched each dancer's gesture, the way their arms curved like growing vines. Her face softened. "I have never seen anything like this," she admitted. Miles lowered the projector. "Would you like to try?" Leora hesitated. "You want me to dance?" "Not now," he said, "but later. First, I want to learn about your world." They walked along winding paths of lavender and moonstone. Miles paused beside a rose that glowed pale pink in shadow. He plucked a single petal and held it out. Leora reached for it, fingertips brushing his. The petal glimmered. "In Elantris, we prize balance," she said. "Nature and art must live together." Miles nodded. "On Earth, we have parks and galleries. We try to keep balance too." They stopped at a carved bench by a lily pond. Miles placed the projector on its arm. He tapped it again, and soft music began to play. It was a string quartet, gentle, warm, with rising notes that felt like a sunrise. The princess closed her eyes, letting the sound flow through her. After a long moment, she opened them. "Your music. It speaks without words," she said. Miles smiled. That is the magic of art. Leora leaned back, resting her hand on the smooth marble. The distant hum of palace energy crystals mixed with the earthly music. In that quiet space, two worlds touched. For the first time since the decree, Leora felt something shift inside her. The bonds of tradition still held her, but a new idea took root. Perhaps true unity was more than duty. Perhaps it was understanding another heart. Miles watched her, hope bright in his eyes. "Thank you for listening," he said. Leora turned to him. Her gaze was softer now, less guarded. "Thank you for sharing," she replied. And in that shared moment, the bridge between their worlds grew stronger. Late that night, the pale light of Elantris Prime's twin moons spilled through the tall windows of the Royal Observatory. Princess Leora stood before the great telescope, her silver hair catching moonbeams. The polished brass of the instrument glowed softly. She adjusted the focus and peered at distant stars, her breath slow and steady. Behind her, footsteps approached. Miles Harper stepped into the lantern-lit room, carrying 2 steaming cups of jasmine tea. He offered one to Leora. "For warmth," he said quietly. Leora nodded and accepted the cup. She cradled it in her hands, the fragrance rising in delicate waves. She took a small sip, eyes still fixed on the telescope. "Thank you," she whispered. Miles moved beside her and gazed upward through the open roof. "The moons are full tonight," he said. "They feel like watchful eyes." Leora turned and studied him. Under the twin orbs, his face looked calm yet thoughtful. She set her cup on a nearby table. "I come here when I cannot sleep," she admitted. "The court is never silent. But out here, I feel peace." Miles nodded. "I understand. On Earth, I stand under the night sky when I need space from the crowds." She glanced back at the telescope, and then at a star cluster beyond. "The Celestine family has guarded a secret for centuries," she said, voice low. "We believe our blood carries a gift tied to these moons, but no one has proved it." Miles turned toward her, interest brightening his eyes. "What kind of gift?" Leora stepped away from the telescope, wrapping her arms around herself. "Legends say that under the twin moons, a true Celestine can read the heart of another soul. But the trial has never succeeded. Many tried, and each failed, or so the stories say." Miles studied her. "Do you believe it?" She hesitated, then closed her eyes. "I do, but I have never tried. I fear disappointment, and possibly betrayal." Miles set his tea aside and offered his hand. "May I be your trial?" Her eyes opened slowly. "You would let me try?" He nodded, voice gentle. "I trust your heart more than any legend." Leora stepped closer, the moonlight soft on her face. She took his hand. For a moment, nothing moved but the slow drift of moonlight across the floor. Then she closed her eyes, focusing on his warmth, his steady pulse. In the hush of the observatory, Leora wondered if she should feel something. Images, words, emotion. But instead, she felt calm certainty. He was honest. He cared. His hope and kindness shone brighter than any star. When she opened her eyes, Miles held her gaze. "Do you see anything?" he asked. Leora smiled, a gentle curve of her lips. "I feel clarity. Your presence is real, and your intentions are pure." She paused, then added softly, "The secret lies in truth, not magic." Miles exhaled in relief. He clasped her hand. "Then we have passed the trial together." Outside, the moons shifted over the palace towers. Inside, 2 unlikely allies stood side by side, bound by newfound trust. In shared silence, they watched the heavens, knowing their journey had taken a deeper turn, guided not by prophecy, but by honest hearts beneath the twin moons. The morning sun glinted off the crystal spires as Princess Leora entered the council chamber. Rows of carved benches lined the marble floor. At the center sat the Duke of Varn, his face stern beneath his dark hood. Around him, other nobles whispered, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Lyra paused at the chamber doors. She knew Duke Varn opposed the marriage. His family had long held the belief that mixing human blood with Elantrian royalty would bring disaster. Today, he would demand her rejection of envoy Miles Harper. She walked forward, her gown whispering across the floor. Miles followed behind, posture straight yet respectful. Chancellor Marisol watched from the dais, her expression grave. She had called this meeting to ease tensions, but she feared the Duke's fury might erupt. The Duke of Varn rose, his cloak falling back to reveal a medal of ancient lineage. "Princess," he said, voice low and commanding, "this union endangers our future. A prophecy foretells that when sky-born barbarians join our throne, the crystal heart of Elantris Prime will shatter." Gasps echoed in the chamber. Lyora's heart pounded. She glanced at Miles, who offered a calm nod. She squared her shoulders and stepped forward. "Duke Varn," she replied, voice clear, "I respect our history and honor our people, but I refuse to let fear guide our path. We cannot condemn an entire species on an old legend." The Duke's eyes flickered with anger. "Legends are our foundation. Without them, our world loses its soul." Miles bowed his head slightly. "With respect, Duke, Earth has many legends too. We learn from them, but we also ask questions. I ask you now, is the fear of legend enough to deny us unity and progress?" A murmur rose among the nobles. Some nodded in quiet agreement. Others shook their heads. The Duke raised a hand to silence them. "Progress." He spat. "Our progress is built on strength and tradition. What guarantee do we have that humans will not bring us ruin?" Leora felt her pulse quicken. She needed to turn the tide. She stepped closer to the Duke, her voice steady. "I offer you my word, as princess, and as witness to my own heart. Miles Harper has shown nothing but respect, kindness, and courage. He seeks to learn our ways, not destroy them." The Duke's gaze flicked to Miles. "Words can be smooth," he said, "but actions speak truth. Envoy, what will you do if this marriage proceeds against the will of your own people?" Miles drew a slow breath. "I will return to Earth and explain why we must stand together. I will lay down my position if that is what it takes to protect our alliance. But I believe our peoples can benefit far more from cooperation than from isolation." Silence fell. Even the palace guards held their breath. The Duke of Varn studied them both, his expression unreadable. Finally, he lowered his hood and bowed his head. "Very well," he said, voice softer. "I will not stand against your decision today, Princess. But know this, I will watch closely, and should harm come to Elantris Prime, I will be the first to speak against this union." Leora inclined her head respectfully. "Thank you, Duke. Your vigilance honors our world. I ask only that you also watch for hope, and not just for fear." The Duke rose fully, backing away toward his seat. The chamber shifted. Some voices spoke in praise, others in doubt. Miles stood beside Leora, pride shining in his eyes. Chancellor Marisol tapped her rod, restoring order with a gentle smile. As the council dispersed, Leora and Miles exchanged a look of quiet triumph. They had faced the fiercest opponent in the court, and held fast. Their bond had deepened, and their shared journey through intrigue had only made their alliance stronger. The Grand Temple of Light stood silent at dawn, its tall columns carved from white crystal. Princess Leora approached the temple doors, her heart racing. Today, the High Priestess would test her loyalty to Elantris Prime's sacred traditions. She knew the trial would challenge her in ways she could not yet imagine. Miles Harper waited at the edge of the marble courtyard. He bowed deeply when Leora saw him. "I wish I could go with you," he said softly. Leora managed a small smile. "This is my path alone," she replied. Her gown of pale green rippled in the gentle morning breeze. "But I carry your trust in my heart." He nodded, eyes bright with pride and concern. "I believe in you." Inside the temple, the air shimmered with quiet energy. The High Priestess, draped in silver robes, stood before a tall archway glowing with soft light. She raised her staff, which held a glowing crystal sphere at its tip. "Princess Leora," she intoned, voice echoing off the walls. "To prove your devotion to our people, you must pass the trial of the crystal labyrinth. You will enter alone. No guide may follow you. Go now, and may the light guide your way." Leora bowed her head and stepped forward. Beyond the archway lay a wide corridor that shimmered as if made of glass. She took a deep breath and crossed the threshold. The light shifted, and the corridor stretched into a maze of crystal walls, each one reflecting her image a little differently. At first, the passages were simple. Leora followed the glow at the end of the highest wall, believing it marked the way. But soon, paths branched in every direction. She paused at a fork. One corridor was cool and dim, the other warm and bright. She closed her eyes, recalling her mother's advice. "Trust yourself above all else." She chose the bright path. Shards of rainbow light danced on the walls as she walked. Her footsteps whispered on the crystal floor. She remembered the people she served, the farmers who tended glowing crops, the scholars who wrote star maps, the children who played under moonlight. She drew strength from their faces in her mind. After winding turns, she reached a dead end. Panic fluttered in her chest. She placed her palm on the crystal wall. It felt solid and cold. In the reflection, she saw not just herself, but a mask of fear. She pressed her hand harder. "I will not fail you," she whispered. The wall before her slid open like a door, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, crystals formed a circle around a low pedestal. On the pedestal lay a single white flower, its petals glowing faintly. Leora stepped forward and gently lifted the bloom. The moment she touched it, the chamber filled with warm light, guiding her back to the archway. She emerged into the temple hall, still holding the flower. The high priestess smiled, a gentle glow in her eyes. "You have shown courage and faith," she declared. "You understand that true devotion comes from the heart, not from fear of prophecy." Leora offered the flower to the priestess, bowing deeply. Outside, Miles rushed forward and took her hand, relief shining on his face. She squeezed his hand and smiled, her own relief bright in her green eyes. Through the trial of the crystal labyrinth, Leora had proven her strength and learned that faith in herself could shine brighter than any crystal. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through narrow slits high in the palace's ancient foundation. Princess Leora and envoy Miles Harper stood before a heavy stone door etched with runes. This secret passage lay hidden beneath the grand temple, a place few knew existed. Leora traced a fingertip over the runes. "My ancestors carved these symbols," she said softly. "They spoke of a hidden heart, where Elantrian destiny met the stars." Miles knelt and examined the lock. "I believe this key," he said, holding up the glowing flower from her trial. "We'll open it." He pressed the bloom gently against the door. The runes glowed, and the stone shifted, sliding aside with a low rumble. Their torches cast dancing shadows on rough walls. They stepped into a circular chamber, its floor paved with pale tiles. At the center lay a raised dais, where a crystal basin held rippling water. Around them, murals curved along the walls. Leora moved closer, awe on her face. "Look," she whispered. "Our history, from the first Celestine ruler to now." The murals showed Elantrian priests, scholars, and farmers under twin moons. Then, at one point, a new figure appeared, a human in simple robes, standing hand in hand with a princess. Miles joined her at the mural's edge. "They dreamed of unity even then," he said, voice hushed. "They believed two worlds could grow stronger together." Leora's heart fluttered. She studied the scene. Elantrian symbols, crystals, vines, moons wove into human shapes, trees, rivers, suns. Where they met, the paint shone brighter, as if lit from within. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air. The crystal basin's water glowed, showing flickering images on its surface. Leora and Miles leaned over and saw the past come to life. They watched their ancestors speak in voices that sounded like wind through leaves. One voice said, "When hearts align across the void, the true power of Elantris is born." Another warned, "Beware the doubt that poisons hope." Leora shivered as the voices faded. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the echo of generations. "They tried before," she murmured. "They believed in us." Miles touched her shoulder gently. "And now it is our turn." They turned their gazes back to the murals. Leora knelt and traced the path where human and Elantrian figures walked side by side. "This is the promise we carry," she said. "Not just a marriage decree, but a hope written in stone." Miles lowered himself beside her. "We must share this story," he said. "Show the court that unity is more than politics. It is our very heritage." Leora rose and stepped onto the dais. She cupped her hands and scooped a small amount of the glowing water. The liquid shimmered like starlight. She turned to Miles, offering the basin to him. "Together," she said, "we will bring their vision into the light." Miles dipped his fingers into the water, then reached out and touched Leora's hand. The glow pulsed once, bright and steady, as if the chamber itself acknowledged their bond. In that silent moment, beneath ancient runes and living memory, they understood their true task: to unite two worlds not by duty alone, but by weaving their histories into a single tapestry, one that would shine for generations to come. Before the pale light of dawn, the grand amphitheater lay silent. Rows of marble seats curved around a wide plaza where the people of Elantris Prime gathered. At the top of the steps stood Princess Leora, dressed in a gown of soft silver that caught the first rays of morning. Beside her, Envoy Miles Harper wore his dark suit and silver badge, shoulders squared in quiet confidence. Chancellor Marisol stepped forward and raised her hand. "People of Elantris Prime," she called, her voice carrying across the plaza. "We have witnessed our princess's courage, her trials in shadowed halls and whispered chambers. Now she speaks her truth for all to hear." A hush fell. Even the palace guards leaned forward. Leora took a slow breath, feeling the cool breeze stir her hair. She looked out at the sea of faces: farmers in simple robes, scholars clutching scrolls, children tucked into their parents' arms, nobles in rich colors. Their eyes were fixed on her. "I stand before you not as a symbol of duty alone," Leora began, her voice clear and steady. "I stand as a bridge between our world and another, a human world called Earth. For too long, we have measured our worth by old fears and distant prophecies, but fear cannot guide us forward." She paused and glanced at Miles. He gave a slight nod of encouragement. She turned back to the crowd. "I have walked the crystal labyrinth and faced my ancestors' doubts. I have touched the hidden truths beneath our temple floors, and I have learned one lesson above all. Unity is born when we share our hearts, not when we yield to fear." A murmur of agreement rippled through the amphitheater. Leora lifted her hands, palms open to the crowd. "Envoy Miles Harper came to us with honest words and open eyes. He has shown respect for our customs, kindness for our people, and bravery in the face of suspicion. Today I declare my choice, not because tradition demands it, but because my heart believes in it." She stepped down one stair, closing the distance between herself and the people. "I choose alliance over isolation. I choose friendship over fear. I choose to stand with Miles Harper and all of humanity, that together we may learn, grow, and build a future brighter than any crystal or moon." At that moment, the first golden sunbeam struck the plaza, illuminating a crystal sculpture behind Leora. The sculpture, two hands, one human and one Elantrian, interlocked in a firm grip. Its surface caught the light and scattered prisms across the crowd. Gasps of wonder rose, followed by strong, clear applause. Miles climbed the steps to stand beside Leora. He bowed deeply to the people, then turned to her and offered his arm. She took it without hesitation. Chancellor Marisol smiled and raised both their joined hands high. "Let this day mark a new era for Elantris Prime and Earth," she proclaimed. May this union shine as proof that when our hearts are open, the stars themselves bear witness to our promise. As the sun climbed higher, the crowd erupted in cheer. Lyora and Miles stood together, their joined hands gleaming in the light. In that bright morning, two worlds united not by decree alone, but by the hopeful hearts of a princess and her envoy, ready at last to write their shared destiny. The sun blazed high above the hall of echoing stars as Princess Lyora and envoy Miles Harper stepped onto the raised dais. Around them, banners bearing Earth's blue and green symbol fluttered beside Elantris Prime's crystal crest. A soft breeze carried the mixed scents of alien blossoms and earthly pines, reminding everyone of the worlds now joined. Lyora stood tall in her silver and emerald gown. Miles stood beside her in his dark suit, the silver badge on his chest catching the light. Both of them held a single white rose, the symbol of their union. At a signal from Chancellor Marisol, they pressed their roses together. Petals drifted upward, carried by a hidden air current, as the crowd erupted in joyful applause. From the front row, farmers and scholars, merchants and artists rose together. They cheered, stamping their feet, their voices echoing against the domed ceiling. In those sounds, Lyora heard the beginning of something vast, an era when fear gave way to friendship. Chancellor Marisol spoke next. "Today," she said, her voice warm and strong, "we open a new chapter in history. The Alliance Academy will soon welcome students from both our worlds. Our first joint research vessel will explore the Andoran Rift, and our cultures will blend through art, music, and festivals that honor who we are and who we may become." From the crowd, a gifted Elantrian musician began to play the soft tones of a moonharp. Miles lifted his head, recognizing the opening bars of a human melody. As the tunes merged, Lyora held Miles's hand, squeezing gently. Their smiles said what words could not. After the music, a delegation of Earth's artists offered Lyora a painted silk scarf, its colors shifting like the planet's oceans. She draped it over her shoulders, the fabric cool and alive. Then, Elantrian architects presented Miles with a small crystal model of the new starport they would build together, an elegant spire reaching into the sky. As gifts were exchanged, Lyora looked out at the crowd. Children waved flags of both worlds, their laughter bright. She caught the eye of a young girl standing beside her mother. The girl's face shone with wonder, as if she had just glimpsed magic. Lyora nodded at her, and the girl waved back, eyes wide with hope. When the ceremony ended, Lyora and Miles walked down the aisle together. They moved past nobles and commoners alike, shaking hands and offering bows. Each touch felt like a promise. Promise of open borders, promise of shared knowledge, promise of peace. At the palace gates, they paused. Beyond lay a courtyard where lanterns of glass and steel had been set to light at twilight. "Look at them," Miles said softly, gesturing to the lanterns that would glow like stars when night fell. "They remind me of our future, bright points of light, guiding travelers between worlds." Lyora smiled and slipped her hand into his. "And each lantern is a story waiting to be told," she replied. "Stories of discovery, friendship, and hope." As the day waned and the first lantern was lit, its glow spread across the courtyard. Together, they watched the light bloom, knowing this was not the end of their journey, but the very start of a grand adventure. For Elantris Prime, for Earth, and for all who would follow in their footsteps.